Hey, so this is the Drunkalogs, a podcast about addiction and recovery in which each guest shares their version of how it was, what happened, and how it is now, and then endures a half-hour Q&A at the hands of your host, Nick Morton. My next guest really discovered booze and drugs when he enlisted in the Navy at 17 years of age, and his story after that is, it seems, largely one of obsession, and how he learned to break its fever grip through prayer and surrender. He's now 25 years sober, a proud father, and author of multiple books. Won't you please welcome Douglas Mallon. The usual thing of sort of like how it was, what happened, how it is now. Your name is Douglas.
My last name is Mallon.
Mallon.
Mallon, yeah. Douglas
Right.
Mallon. Yeah.
And where are you from?
New York City, the Bronx.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, the Bronx. Because I was born. You're from Long Island, right? I was born on Patchogue.
Oh, no way. Yeah. I grew up in Locust Valley.
We moved to Parkchester when I was like 5. Like we went the wrong way. You're supposed to go from the Bronx to Long Island, not from Long Island. And then my parents. I'm from like a very chaotic family. A lot of violence, alcoholism, abuse, and it's just like a hand grenade exploded kind of thing. And my parents got separated, divorced, whatever. And then so my mom had to take care of all 4 of us by herself, and then we wound up moving into Yonkers and then, she was a secretary in the city. And, I had 3 older sisters. They were all runaways living in the village. And
Wow.
Yeah, I was starting to get high at like 13,
Sure.
It was the streets. It's just what you do, man. It's like everybody's getting high, in back then at least, And there was no let me tell you, bro, man, kids rode there was no helmets for kids with bicycles. I remember one time I was like 10 and me and my friends are walking and we started in the Bronx and we're on this freeway. I'll never forget this. And we see the sign that says Connecticut Thruway. It's like, how are 4 little 10-year-old kids walking along? That just doesn't happen today,
Totally. And so I'm curious, how old were you when your parents got divorced?
9
Right.
9 years old. And that was a very thing. It wasn't cool and usual. And I was very deeply ashamed.
Sure.
I was very ashamed and I didn't want anyone to find out. And I was very afraid that people would find out. And right across the street, because now we're in Riverdale, which is a very nice section in the Bronx. And right across the street is PS 81. And I was just afraid that everyone was going to find out that my parents were getting divorced and I was deeply, deeply ashamed. But
did your dad stay in the picture after the divorce?
My dad he was like come in with his Superman cape at intervals and just drop in and be the hero.
Right.
And he I remember when my mom did all the work. She did all she raised 4 kids on a secretary salary, 4 kids. My dad was
what
never
kind of
there,
secretary was she? She must have been like working at a hedge fund.
Con Ed. She worked at Con Ed, bro. Con Ed in Union Square.
Amazing.
My mom devoted her life to her kids. And that, what? Think about my parents. I learned from both of them. I learned how to be like, I have my daughter's here. I wasn't expecting that. She's in the bedroom now, but my daughter's autistic, so she requires extra special care. But I think what my mom did raising 4 of us, it's like I got it easy. But to answer your question about my dad, and one of the great things about recovery is that when I came to recovery, when I finally was ready to just say, okay, tell me what to do and I'll do it. I was totally estranged from my father. I mean, I hadn't talked to him like 12 years. I'll tell you, this thing happened. This is what it was like. This is what my dad was like. And I love my dad. I talk to him a couple of times a week now, and he still drinks, and God bless him. But I'll give you an example. Okay, it's my 15th birthday or my 16th. I'm not sure. And I'm working in this pet store, right, in Yonkers. And my dad's birthday gift to me is I'm going to go to a whorehouse and get laid. That's my dad's gift to me. Right?
How does he present it?
He told me, and it was like a threat. I didn't want to do it. I was terrified. I did not want to do that.
Sure.
But what kind of a dad, you know what I mean? But that's the world he came from.
Did you guys go through with it?
Listen to what happened, right? I come out of the pet store now, hold in to God, hopefully, because my dad was very undependable.
Right.
You might not see him for months. there were times where he was going to take me to Yankee Stadium, and I'd be waiting on the front stoop, and he wouldn't show up, and I'd be waiting there for 4 hours, and that was a regular thing. And I was just hoping Dad doesn't show up today because I don't want to go to a whorehouse and get laid,
Sure.
He shows up, and he started assaulting me.
Oh God.
On my birthday, he beat the living crap out of me on Broadway in front of the pet store, and because he had heard that I said something inappropriate to this girl, because in the building I lived in upstairs, there were all these college girls, and they were always flirting with me. Those college guys and all this. And I had this kind of like, this girl was flirting with me, this girl, Teresa. And anyway, it got back to my dad that I said something which is totally ridiculous. Nothing that I said warranted brutalizing your own son on his 60th birthday. But that wasn't enough. That wasn't the whole end of the story. Later on that night, he came over to my apartment where I was living with my mom, and he lured me into gambling. Pong had just come out, Atari, Pong.
Yeah, sure.
It had just come out. And he lured me, I was 15 or 16, and into gambling all my birthday money. He took all my birthday money. He left. Yeah, can you believe that? He left with all my birthday money. I couldn't believe it. It was like $70 in like 1979. I couldn't believe it. But here's the thing. I didn't realize at that moment that my relationship was totally fractured.
Right.
Because I couldn't really internalize. But that was like the breaking point. And by the time I got sober, I hadn't talked to him in almost 15 years. I hated his guts. I vowed I'd never speak to him again. That's what I came here with. And my mom.
To go back, so you're like, you start getting high when you're 13 years old. Like, what was do you remember like the first time you like had a drink or got fucked up and you were like, oh,
my mom and dad, my mom, both my mom and dad were raging alkies. And my mom used to give me ice cold shots of beer when I was a little kid.
The best.
And I loved it. My mom would say, you want a shot of beer? And even like it says, the effect produced is what I was going after. It wasn't the taste.
Totally.
And so, I learned about it, and she wanted to inoculate me because she knew I was going to find it out there on the streets. And then, by the time I'm 13, it's peer pressure going down to the Hudson River. You get some skell who's 18 to get you beer and quarts of beer, and everybody's doing it. That's just the way everyone was doing it. And getting drunk and the room is spinning, and then weed and all that. It was just a part of life. Right. By the time I was 13 or 14, it was just every day,
And then, so how does that then evolve? Like, what happens to you? Do you go to high school? You go to college?
I didn't go to high school, bro. I went to school high. I'm a ninth grade dropout. School was a scary place. I was a skinny, timid kid. I was getting picked on and bullied. I felt completely stupid. I didn't understand anything that was happening. I'd be in class and I'd literally be on the wrong page. Like, everyone is on page 79. I'm like, I don't know what page we're on. And I got to find out what page we're on without anybody knowing that I don't know what page we're on. Please don't ask me anything. It was terrifying. School was terrifying. But, the amazing thing is, I'm a ninth grade dropout. But I've written like $20. So.
Wait, so you for fucking real dropped out at ninth grade? And what'd you do?
Ninth grade. Okay, so what happened was I just stopped going and nobody really seemed to notice. And I just kind of kept rolling with it. And I didn't do much. I was just a taker. I was living off my mom, living on the couch and not doing anything. And then around 17, I joined the Navy. My dad signed for me to join the Navy. And that's when it really took off. Because I was 17. I was a pimple-faced, skinny. I was a virgin. And, the next thing you know, I'm in boot camp. And now I'm, with Fleet Marines and sailors and trying to prove that I'm a man and, drinking hard alcohol and throwing up. And it was and the thing about me is I have alcoholism. It's like when, I haven't had a drink or a drug in 25 years, but just put a can of Budweiser in me and I cannot moderate. I can't moderate the consumption of alcohol. But the thing is, when I was in the Navy, that's when I discovered crack. And that's when it really, oh, dude, forget it, man.
How did you discover crack in the Navy?
Well, there was this kid named Williams and he was on the boat. He was from Harlem and he was getting kicked out. He was like a couple of months ahead of me in terms of getting kicked out because he was for smoking crack. And we were both from New York. So he we went up to New York and he showed me the spot in Harlem, 125th and Amsterdam Avenue. It was
Where were you stationed? Was the boat was in New York at that point?
It was in Norfolk, Virginia, but there was Piedmont Airlines. They had round trip, dude. You could fly from New York to Newark for like $29.
I remember
this is like 1983.
Yeah.
So, we flew up and I found this spot, and then he got kicked out, and I had lent him $50, which my friend Adam T, he's a sober friend of ours. You probably know him too, but Adam T says, and he's so on the money with this, he goes, if you want to get someone out of your life, lend them some money.
So good.
It's so true, right?
So
it's like true. I lent this dude $50. I never saw him again, So now now I got to go by myself because I don't know where Williams is. So I got to go into Harlem by myself to cop. And, that was a dangerous, dangerous neighborhood for me to be going in by myself, and nothing ever happened. But when I look back and I think about the dangerous situations that I put myself in and the things that could have happened, and I was just so oblivious. Like, I'm in Jersey, my dad married this woman in Jersey, and now I'm in the suburbs with the Jersey kids, and we're going over to Washington Heights to cop some rock. This is before they called it crack, they called it freebase. And we're going over the GW to Washington Heights. You're from New York, right? Washington Heights, that's a war zone. That's a freaking war zone. It was back then.
Right.
But we got into a little road rage, but we didn't think anything of it. And we pulled up into Washington Heights to cop, and all of a sudden there was like this huge explosion. The window just exploded, and what it was those guys that we had a road rage with, they followed us, and they threw a tire iron through the window. And dude, they were pulling me out. Like God knows what they would have did to me, because I was in the passenger. And the guy who was driving put it in reverse and kind of ran over one of them, and we just took off. We could have gone to Rikers Island that day.
Wow.
Yeah. That's just one. I'll tell you another one. My then brother-in-law was a beeper salesman. Beepers had just come out, but he was also a coke dealer. And my job, this is right after I got kicked out of the Navy, was to just wait behind the wheel in case I had to move the car while he was inside. But he was dealing coke. And we were on the freeway, and we got into an accident. It was January, the roads were slicked, and he lost control of the car, and it started spinning, and it like bumped. Nobody got hurt. But he opened up his briefcase and he pulled out a bag of coke, like felonies worth, I don't know how many ounces it was, but you get caught with this, you're going to prison for a long time. He pulls it out of his bag and goes, "Hold this." And I was like, fuck. I was like, no. But this is the life I was living. I mean, if we would have got caught with that, I could still be in. God, I'm a skinny kid. I can't go to jail. Are you kidding me?
You didn't get like all yoked up being in the military?
Me, no. I was
one of those skinny little Navy waifs. Navy wave.
Well, I wasn't that bad, but
right.
I was a RM, which is a radioman.
Right.
Which is I was in the ships. I had a top secret security clearance. I was in, sending emails and receiving before anybody had email. And so that's where I was. It wasn't really a very physical. It was more clerical and administrative. Right. It got really weird in there. I had a couple of really weird experiences in there. There was this one guy, we're in the radio shack on the ship in the middle of the ocean. And there was this guy who was a good dude, but when he was drunk, he was just a different person. And he came on to me. It was just me and him in this radio shack by ourselves. And he got up behind me and he blew in my ear, and it really freaked me out, man. And things like that were happening. There was a lot of weird stuff happened to me in the Navy. I was robbed at gunpoint in Milwaukee when I first got out of boot camp. I was 18
How many?
years old.
What kind of boat were you on?
The USS Raleigh, LPD-1, Norfolk, Virginia. What they call it, it's a gator freighter. It just takes Marines to battle.
Right.
My ship, the Raleigh, was at Pearl Harbor. It wasn't struck, but it was at Pearl Harbor. And it was one of the oldest ships. And the funny thing is, they used it for target practice. It no longer exists.
And at capacity, how many souls would that boat carry?
Oh, probably 1,000, 1,500 crammed in when you're on, because we would do NATO exercises.
Right. And so that's like its own like little city. I mean, like I'm sure crazy shit happens
really
on that boat.
Oh yeah. And then like we went to Amsterdam and we got hash and we were smoking it on the Signal Bridge. And I remember I bought a little cube of opium for like $50. And I remember I ate this opium and it wasn't working. And I thought I'm going to have to confront this guy because I got ripped off. And this is in the middle of the ocean and I'm playing chess and then, my opponent goes, and I was like, oh, this is,
I guess it's working.
I grew up in the streets of New York. I learned more about drugs on that boat than.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then I got kicked out. Man.
What'd you get kicked out for?
I went AWOL because what happened was, I was jonesing to get high, and I was in Norfolk, and I just I kept going to cop. I just kept going up to Harlem to cop, and I was like, I'm not going back. Right. And I knew the rules. I stayed away for 29 days. They gave me restriction and extra duty, which was really a beautiful thing. And this is a thing I've learned over the years is that, I'm so blessed because I have God. I can't really explain it, but I have had such great fortune in the spiritual realm because, they put me on restriction and extra duty the first time. And so the Navy, what they want to do is they want to with you to the best of their ability. And they put me in this thing on the Raleigh called the Shaft Alley, which sounds like a gay porno movie, Shaft Alley, right. But it was like this big, it's the propeller, it's the ship's propeller. Sure. And you can fit inside of it and you have to scrub it. They made me go inside and scrub the propeller. But my point is, my supervisor was a born again Christian. Mm-hmm. And he really cared about me and my salvation. I'm not a born again Christian. I'm Catholic. Right. But he was talking to me about God and love and Christ. And he wasn't like, hey, asshole, get in there and scrape this. He was more concerned with my salvation. And his name was Jesse. I lost contact with him, but I never forgot him.
Right.
Yeah. And go ahead. I'm sorry. Did you want to ask something?
No. Keep going.
Go ahead. Well, okay, what I was going to say is another example of that is like right around 1995 when I was circling the drain right before I got sober, and I was obsessed with my ex-girlfriend. I mean, I was obsessed with her, and I was doing drive-bys and stakeouts and all that crazy stuff. I didn't want to hurt her. I just want to get back under the covers, that's all. Right. But I knew that she went to St. Monica's. So I started going to St. Monica's hoping I would see her there. But I didn't see her there, but there was this guy, he gets up and his name was Professor Bill Creasy. And this guy teaches the Bible at UCLA and he lectures on the Bible and he just brought the characters of the Bible to life. And I would go there every Sunday just to hear this guy. And it really, these things keep happening where I'm going for the wrong reasons into this darkness. And somehow there's this light there to intercept me. And it's just, I'm so grateful that for that. I'm just grateful for God's grace and presence in my life. I'm eternally grateful and I'm happy most of the time because of it.
So you get discharged from the Navy.
Other than honorable.
Yeah. And what happens then?
I went to New York. I went back to New York. Now I'm just a total loser trying to get high every day.
How old are you at this point?
Like 20.
Right.
I sleeping on my sister's couches, and I got a job. I'm sleeping on my sister's couches. I get a job in the supermarket in Skyview in the Bronx in the night shift, and I swear to God, my supervisor had Down syndrome. My boss has Down syndrome. And one night I'm in the freezer and I'm taking like a family size pack of steaks, like stuffing them in my pants. And, because I don't want to be a total taker. I want to contribute to my sister's place. And, this kid, my supervisor walked in and he's caught me red-handed, but he didn't quite understand. But I could see it really hurt him because he liked me. He looked up to me and he caught me red-handed. And I took those frozen steaks home. I took them anyway. And then it was just like Coke, booze. My life was just, what a waste. And I was just a waste. And, and I went to, some meetings, and I just thought that they were making too much work and it was too complicated and I don't need to do all that. And I just put the plug in the jug and got dry, but on my own. And I just stayed miserable. Everything was a conflict. And I, when I was working downtown, like when I got a good job at this advertising company, J. Walter Thompson, and they were in like 42nd and Lex, right in Grand Central Station.
Right.
And I would, before I got dry, it's like I had to have a tall can of lunch, at least a tall can of lunch. And then I get a 40 ounce on the bus ride back uptown, or the subway, whatever. It's like my whole life was alcohol. I always had a bottle in my hand, and that's who I was and what I was. And I remember, my sister, what happened was my sister set me up on a blind date, and I went on a date with this girl, and I thought it went really well. And this girl said to my sister, your brother has a problem with alcohol. And when my sister told me that, I was like, what? I only had a couple of beers and a couple of shots. And my sister said, no, Douglas, even when you're not drinking, you smell like alcohol, right. And she says it's very unattractive. And that was the thing she said, that really, it's very unattractive, because I was so lonely. And I was hearing all these love songs and all these movies about love and, and all this BS. And I knew I had to do something. If it's unattractive, that's what it was. If it's unattractive, I have to do something about it. And
amazing. So you stopped cold turkey and
I went to a couple of meetings. I thought they were making too much work out of it. And I just put the plug in the jug. And
and how long did you keep it there?
Well, for like 2.5 years the first time. And what happened was I was doing it's embarrassing, but I'll tell you the story because it's another example of that, going into the darkness and this light of warmth. This miraculous thing happened in the dirtiest place in the world. I went to this place called Show World. It was a porn theater on 42nd and 8th, and it just had porn booths and all over the place. And it was disgusting, but that's how I was staying numb and going in there. And I went. They had live girls on the top floor, and I said, "Well, I'll go see that." And at this time of my life, I couldn't even look in a person's eyes. I was such an empty shell. And there was this really attractive young woman, raven-haired, brown-eyed woman, at the top of this stairwell, and she was smiling at me, and she was friendly. And her name was Tommy, and her roommate was Lois Ayres, who was a porn star at the time, who was doing live shows. And they were from LA.
Right.
And I started talking to this girl, Tommy, and she had never been to New York. And I became her tour guide. And so for the next few nights, we hung out. And Tommy went on to marry James Brown, the godfather of soul.
Wow.
Yeah,
Crazy world.
And I totally lost contact with her. But here's my point, is that, my dream is to be a rock star. But I don't play an instrument and I can't sing. But I can sing and I write songs too. But honestly, my dream is to be a rock star. And she's a musician. She's in a band called Hardly Dangerous. And we're going to start a band. And, and I'm hanging out with her and Lois and these other glamoury, glitzy LA people. And I'm sold on LA. When's the next flight to LA?
Right.
That whole thing, that whole shiny image closed me on coming out. And I saved every dime I could to get to LA. And I remember I knocked on Tommy's door and Lois was there, and she was like, she didn't want to see me. Tommy doesn't live here. Go to the Sunset Strip. Go to the Rainbow on the Strip. I went to the Rainbow on the Strip my first night in LA. I saw Tommy. She didn't even, I don't think she even remembered me. She wasn't like, oh, hey, great, I'm glad you're here. It wasn't like that at all. She's like, my God, get away from me. And my first night in LA, I was hanging out. I swear to God, I'm not making this up. My first night in LA, I was hanging out with Slash and Axl from Guns N' Roses.
Right.
I was sitting at a table with them my very first night in LA. But then, I was there on my own. And the thing is, one of my sisters said to me, I was at war with all my family, my sisters, everyone. And my sister told me right before I left for California, you'll be back in 2 weeks. I remember she said that. I couldn't go home. I wanted to go home so bad. But I sunk every time I had into an apartment, so now I'm stuck here. I had an apartment right behind the Cat and Fiddle on Sunset Boulevard.
Nice.
Yeah. And then I got really lonely and I started drinking. I was really lonely, and I got drunk because to deal with my aloneness. And I got really, really sick. That's where I met Michelle, this girl who I became obsessed with. And oh my God, I put her through hell. I put me through hell. I was dry for another 5 years. I was going to therapy. I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me. I was miserable.
What were you doing for money?
Well, I had a really good job. And that's the thing, at this time, I would do temp jobs and everything, but I got a job, a union job, Fujitsu, which was selling phone systems. It was a really good job. It was a high-paying job, full benefits. It was probably the best job I ever had. That's the thing. I had a good job. I had my own apartment. I had a car. I was a nice-looking kid, well-spoken, but I was always alone, and I was always miserable and paranoid and angry and afraid and ashamed, and I was just this dull-throbbing ache of just human suffering, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I would say, how can it be alcoholism? I haven't had a drink in all these years. And you see, that's the thing is, I knew I was an alcoholic, but I did not know I had alcoholism. I thought if you're an alcoholic, stop drinking. That's right. It. And all those people at all those meetings, they're just making a very simple thing very complicated, because I didn't know I had alcoholism. And then after like 5.5 years, the anniversary of the day I met Michelle, I purposely drank. And I drank, and then it started getting like Jim Beam, Wild Turkey, vodka. And then I tried to do geographics. I went to San Francisco, and I was drunk all the time, and all my savings were gone. Then I started getting into my mother's bank account. I cleaned out my mom's savings. I got my hands on a credit card. I destroyed her credit. Dude, it got to the point where my own mom would not take a collect call from me. And I later found out that my sisters were strategizing with my mom. How do we protect mommy from Douglas?
Right.
How do we protect mommy when Douglas calls? To take from her, to take more and more. And the beautiful thing is that when I got to the point where I was homeless, dude. I was sleeping in hallways.
What city are you in at that point? Are you back in LA?
Yeah, right. Pretty much right where I am now. See, because I would go into supermarkets, and I would open up a tall can of beer and just guzzle it, and it would kind of get you sick. But then I started hitting the hard stuff. I would get like a family-sized pack of toilet paper and put like a bottle of Jim Beam and a can of Bud behind it and start guzzling Boilermaker. I was getting blitzed out of my mind. And I would eat in supermarkets. I had a whole network of supermarkets that I used to shoplift from, and I would sleep in hallways. And then, I would go to meetings to try to pilfer and borrow money. And I was just had the clothes on my back. And my friend, Richard, who's still a very close friend of mine, he's doing pretty well. And he gave me first and last for an apartment. I got this really nice apartment, and I kept doing what I was doing. I kept shoplifting, not working, and I would go back into this room. It had no furniture. It was an apartment, but it had no furniture. The lights were already on. I don't think I could have got the lights turned on. And what happened was my first day of sobriety, January 14th in 1996. There was eviction notice on the door. I was in the apartment. The room was spinning because I was so up, and I just wanted to get some air. And I woke up the next morning, my first day sober, my first day of sobriety. Half my body was in the street, half my body was in the apartment. The eviction notice was on the door. And I said, I'm going back to those meetings. I'm going to do whatever those people tell me to do. And that's where it started for me. I went and I got involved.
What meeting did you go to?
Well, I got sober at that Jewish temple on Sunset. Those guys, if you know what I'm talking.
I haven't been there, but I'm always just curious.
Industrial strength,
right?
Industrial strength, and then That's what I needed. I need, this one group in the sober community. If for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, there's this one group in the sober community that's kind of like the Marine Corps of sobriety. It's like a whole other level of intensity, and that's what I needed. And yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, did you just like start going to meetings every day or
every single day for years?
And did you get evicted? Did you get evicted from that apartment?
I got evicted because the eviction notice was on the door, and it's a really beautiful thing about it is the way, the sober life and the 12 steps how they took effect in my life. I mean, I got this sponsor named Frank J, who was like in Vietnam. It was like having Dirty Harry for your sponsor. I mean, this guy was in Vietnam 3 times. And he was saying that when the war ended, it broke his heart. This is one of the 6. I'll pass you the information. You can get tapes of this guy. I mean, he passed away, but he taught me alcoholism. Oh, he taught me sobriety. And, he's on my Mount Rushmore,
right.
My personal Mount Rushmore. But, gosh, I kind of lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, I got evicted, but check this out. So I'm going to meetings all the time. And then there's these 12 steps. And then Frank says, you gotta write your 4th step out. And so I write it out, and then we're driving. He's going to go speak at this meeting in far away place. And I read him my 4th step, which is like all my resentments and all my shame and secrets. And he goes, you got to make amends to your dad. And I was thinking, well, I guess you weren't listening, And he goes, well, we're not talking about what he did to you. We're talking about what you did to him. You took his only son from him for 15 years.
Ooh.
And send him a letter and say you're sorry. And in that letter, say I love you.
Wow.
I never would have did that.
No, of course not.
But I did it. And my dad sent me a letter back. And I think me and my dad was the Yankees. My dad taking me to Yankee Stadium when I was little, Yankees. My dad always sends me Yankee stuff. And my dad's man, and here's the thing, the priceless thing, Nick, that you can't get this on Amazon. I've had such a beautiful relationship with my pops now for 23 years. I talked to him yesterday. He drinks every day. Every conversation is politics. Like, Dad, it's too early. I don't want to hear it. But I got my dad back. I got a beautiful relationship with my pop. And then another beautiful thing. Another thing is just so priceless is that my mom, I couldn't face my mom because I ruined her credit. I wiped out her bank account. And my sisters call and say, Mommy's going to be gone soon. She's dying. You have to come say goodbye. So she was in a hospital in Teaneck, New Jersey. I flew all the way back. And my sisters were all there, but I was in the room alone with my mom. And I got down on my knees and I made direct amends. I told her I was sorry for all I had done. And then I wanted her to know that by then I was sober like 2 years.
Right.
And then the doctor comes in. The doctor comes in and says, we're going to change your mom's bedding. So go down to the cafeteria and come back in a half an hour. So I go down, you get a cup, come back up in a half an hour. And the doctor's in, she goes, your mom's gone. She left. And I was like, what?
Wow.
And the doctor told me this often happens. People on the cusp of the next experience wait to say goodbye to the loved ones before they go. And my mom was waiting for me to say goodbye before she went. That's all. But I made direct amends to my mom within hours of her passing. I mean, that is a priceless gift,
Thank God.
And my sister Judy, who said, you'll be back in 2 weeks, I have such a beautiful relationship with all my sisters. It didn't happen overnight. I wasn't trying to heal my relationships with my sisters I wasn't. It was just a byproduct of sober living,
How did they all turn out? I mean, I'm just sort of curious, like they all, run away from home. They're living in the West Village. Like, did they make it out unscathed? Are they all addicts too?
Yeah, my sisters are nuts, but they're tough. They're New Yorkers. They're tough.
Awesome.
Let me tell you how crazy my family is. My oldest sister, Madeline, we're Irish. Hello, we're Irish, Italian, German. My oldest sister, Madeline, met this Israeli guy and converted to Judaism. She lived in Israel. She's totally fluent. I have two beautiful, a nephew and a niece. They're beautiful kids. My niece, Gabby, is working on the front lines in New York City. She's a nurse treating COVID. She's a beautiful kid. And my nephew, Raphael, they're beautiful kids, but they're dual Israeli-American citizens, and they're totally bilingual and fluent. So Madeline, she's nuts, but she's got a heart of gold. She's absolutely a lunatic, but she's the sweetest, kindest person you will ever meet. And then my other two sisters are tough. Like they're like barroom brawlers, types.
Right.
And I mean, they literally go to bars, and they're women in their 50s going to bars and having fist fights. So my sister Judy called me once because they know I'm sober. She called me, and she was outside an AA meeting hall. In Florida. She wanted to go to a meeting because she's a raging alkie. And she called me and said, I just can't get in there. But she called me from outside. She called me from outside a meeting hall, and she just couldn't make it in. And my two sisters are still raging alkies, and my oldest sister is she has mental issues. She's been in and out of institutions, but she's a very kind and sweet person.
And so you have a child. How old's your child?
My daughter Cecilia, she just turned 18. I met her mom. Her mom's sober. I met her mom in the sober community. Her mom's sober 27 years. And we were married 10 years, and it's the longest 10 years of my life, but we're good friends now. And we have our daughter, Cecilia, who's autistic. And so that's an extra challenge because she needs 24/7 care. She's in the bedroom right now. I wasn't expecting her to be there this morning, but she's the light of my life. I mean, she's a great kid. She's a musician. I got her a guitar when she was 10. She plays guitar. She's a beautiful kid, but she needs, really intense supervision. You can't let her out of your sight because she is, you just can't. She's not ready for
what have you been doing for work since you've been sober?
Well, I was doing most of it limo driving. Like I had a messenger. Like first I started when I was in between gigs. I was doing temp work. I couldn't sit in office. I just couldn't do it anymore. My friend had a messenger service. I started doing deliveries. I said, geez, I could do this myself. I started my own messenger service, Mr. Zippy Messenger. And that was pretty cool. And then in 2008, when the economy tanked, I went out of business. Then I started driving a limo. And that's the cool thing. I'm a chauffeur too. I'm not now because of what's going on.
Right.
But, dude, I have this really glamorous. That's what all my books are about. What a couple of them are about is just about driving the stars. I mean, it's like, I'll go pick up Mariah Carey, drop Mariah Carey off, go get, whoever. It's just like this celebrities all the time. Like right before the pandemic, one of my customers is he invented Airbnbs. One of the three guys who invented Airbnb.
Wow.
So, yeah, he's a billionaire, and he doesn't tip, but whatever. Anyway, But one time I had to go pick him up, and this is what I love. It's like, okay, I got to pick Airbnb up, and we're going to Bezos' house, but we got to stop at Schwarzenegger's. I swear to God.
Crazy.
I know where Bezos lives. You want to go to his house? Come on, let's go. Dude, it's insane. When you go to Bezos' house, right?
Yeah.
You just wait in the driveway. First of all, you get to pass security to get in the driveway.
Sure.
But you can't get out of the car. Like if you get out to stretch, they'll come.
Right.
I'm gonna need you to get back in the car, sir.
Wow.
And then you got to sign this thing. It's like, it's insane.
You've written 20 books, you said?
I think it's 20. I lost count. And when I say I've written, I think like 7 novels. And then I've written I write these baseball novelty books. And then when I say and then I've written a bunch of screenplays. And then I have a television series. I wrote a TV show about my life. I have 15 episodes. It's called Wreck. It's about my life as a limo driver, porn addicted limo driver. And anyway, so those are here's one. See, this I count as a book. It's 5 episodes. There's 5 episodes of Wreck in here.
And
right
now, who published that?
You can publish them. I publish them myself.
You publish them yourself, right?
Yeah.
Are you able to sell them? Do people buy them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I have a little following, not much. I'm not really that interested in selling them as much as them and getting something optioned.
Sure.
And really, more than anything, as an artist, and I'm sure you can identify with this, as an artist, God forbid a piano falls on me and crushes me. I just want everything that I've created to survive me. I mean, I'm in the world to create. Right. I'm just in the world to create. I'm doing another one now. I'm doing a screenplay now. I'm always creating. I can't go 15 minutes without writing something. That's it.
You mentioned in your email to me that you had started another recovery program.
Yeah. I can tell you about that.
Yeah.
I don't mind telling you about that at all. Well, when I was in LA and I was strung out on this chick, Michelle, and all my friends knew, and I was going to SAA, Sex Addicts Anonymous, and then my company, that union job that I had, they sent me up to San Francisco, and they didn't have SAA up there. They had SLAA, like
right.
Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. And so I started going to them, but I mean, it was getting really crazy with my behavior. I was doing things that I was really escalating. I was even lonelier than ever. I mean, it's one thing to be home looking at porn, which is pathetic enough. But when you take it to higher levels and I don't want to elaborate too much, but it was getting out of control. And so I started going to these SLAA meetings, and I would, at the end of the meeting, are there any announcements? And I would say, yeah, I'm here from LA, and I would talk about SAA. And if you're having these problems, come, see me after the meeting. So guys would come up to me after the meeting all the time. Me too. I got a problem with hookers. I got a problem with voyeurism. I got a problem with, there was all the whole litany of sex addiction in all its many flavors. So we had the first meetings in my apartment in Lower Haight. It was like 93. Go ahead.
What's the difference between SAA and SLAA?
Oh, so SLAA is Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, which is mostly guys and girls. There's a lot of women there, and it's mostly about relationships,
right?
Heartaches. SAA is more men involved in porn addiction, getting hookers, anonymous sex with other men. The whole gamut. It's hardcore. It's
more about sex than the sort of love addiction
and acting out. Yeah, right. And acting out. And so those meetings started in my apartment, and it's a giant program now. It's enormous. I mean, they have like hundreds of meetings a week. I left, but they kept it going. And
yeah,
I'm not involved in those programs anymore, but that's another thing. It's like, I didn't know when I was going up to San Francisco that's what, my purpose was. That's why God sent me up there to just start this thing, This
girl, Michelle, are you guys in touch at all at this point?
No, I have my amends to her. My amends to her is to stay out of her life.
Right. Right.
And it's one of those things. And sometimes it's funny you say that, because I sometimes I think about maybe, but it's like, nah, just let it. It's been so long now. Just leave her alone.
Right.
Let your amends be. If she used to say this to me when all that was going on, if you were really sorry, if you really cared about me, you'd respect my wishes and leave me alone.
Right.
And I just couldn't. But now I can.
Yeah.
And then, and then that happened again. Like when I had like 18 years sober, right after I got divorced, I got involved with this chick, and the exact same thing happened all over again. And I was doing this, and I want to talk about that before we're done, if it's okay. Is it?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I had 18 years sober, and I was taking cakes for 18 years sober. And like, the night before, it's outside this girl's apartment till like 3:30 or 4 in the morning. I was so obsessed with her. She's gorgeous. Oh God, she's gorgeous. There's a line.
Does she know you're out there?
I don't know. I usually not. I think maybe she might have. I don't know. But it was crazy. These things, these obsessions just take over. Where you're doing drive-bys and you're looking in her garage to see if her car is there, and it's like, I couldn't tell. Here's the thing, dude. I couldn't tell anyone. How can you say you're 18 years sober? How can you tell someone you're involved in this kind of behavior?
You're just like that. You're that out of control.
Your
life is just
out of control. And putting on his face. What?
Sometimes it happens to me. Whatever. I'm a recovering addict. I have that addict.
Totally
obsession, dude. Whatever. Last night I was like, just after dinner, just like stuffing Oreos down my throat. I was like, I can't stop. I want to walk away from this, and I can't. It's beyond my control, and I find it so frustrating. It's just Oreos, so it's not that big a deal. But I'm fucking obsessed with tennis right now. I'll play 3 hours of tennis, and then like the person
That's a
I'm
good
playing with,
obsession. That's a
what?
good
Yeah, it's
obsession.
healthy, but like, like the feeling I have about tennis is not unlike, the excitement I'd feel for like a bag of Coke, it's like, it's weird. Like, and, and I felt the same way when I started doing stand-up comedy, just like the need to fill that hole. Like, it's just like that thing is just, it's like this, it's just a hole that gets deeper and deeper, and like no amount of stuff you put in there can ever fill it. And that like, and when I started doing stand up, I would be in the club watching my friends do stand up, and I'd just be like, I gotta get up there. Like, I want that. I want the crowd. I want the excitement and the risk and the danger of like trying to make the crowd laugh, and the humiliation that comes with fail, like all of it. I just want all of it all the time. And and I would find myself just like giddy with it, like trying to get more of it. And whatever, it was artistically really satisfying. And so it was weird to feel that, like that crazy, like thickening of your throat when you're getting high on cocaine from stand up. But like,
I've done a little of that. It's an adrenaline rush getting up on stage in front of people.
Yeah. And
that's a tough art form. Oh my God, that's hard.
Just like when you talk about, doing these things that like, are not good for you, and yet you can't stop. How did you pull out of that nosedive that time?
It's a beautiful story, and it's just another example of going into the darkness, finding light in the darkness, finding God's grace in this blackness. I was going to these meetings, and this guy was the speaker, was this really vivacious, just like this really electric little guy. Was a little guy when he was in his 60s. And he was talking at this meeting about not an identical thing, but the same thing, about a broad and shooting himself over a broad. He was he had a gun in his mouth over a broad, and I was like, I get this guy.
Right.
And so I go up to him after the meeting, and I get his number, and in long story short, I tell him what's going on. And he goes, Doug, for guys like you and me, God is the only answer. And he says, this is what I've been doing now, and I encourage you to do it. It's really helped me. Because when he was telling the story, he had gotten through it. It was like he was talking past tense.
Yeah.
Not in the grip of this thing anymore. He had licked it. And he told me every single morning, as soon as you get up, there's these prayers we say in the sober community, the 3rd-step prayer, the 7th-step prayer, the 11th-step prayer, and then meditate. Just meditate. Just close your eyes for 20 minutes. And then when you're done with that, write a note to God. Invite God into your life today. And dude, Nick, man, I got stacks of these letters. Dude, I've been doing it for years. Amazing. For like 8 years. I got a pile of books with his prayers every day. I write prayers. And he goes, when you get in your car, open the door, passenger side door, and let God in. And it I got to tell you, man, it has transformed my life. And I'm free. I mean, these demons that were towering over me and commanding, do this now. And I would go do it. They're still there, but they're faint whispers now. They're like, hey, man.
And I mean, when you were obsessed over that woman,
and I still am, I just don't act on it. It's reduced, manageable state.
How long have you been sober now?
25 years.
And was there a moment during that sort of madness where you felt it abate, where you were suddenly like, oh, I'm starting to win this battle?
Yes, definitely. All through prayer. And when I would think of this girl, and it's so funny how these things work. I made up this prayer. God bless blank with love, abundance, safety, security, success in all areas of her life. May all her dreams come true. And that's become a prayer I say for anyone I'm mad at. God bless whoever with love, abundance, safety, security, success in all areas of their life. May all their dreams come true. Prayer works. Prayer is big medicine. It's very powerful. And It's been reduced now to where it's just faint whispers. It's never fully eradicated. I still think about Michelle. I still think about this other woman. But then, also I want to say, I mean, my daughter's mom and I are very close friends. My last 2 relationships are my friends. They kiss me when they see me. So it's not like every time, but I've had it. But the one thing I want to say, and this is like the God's economy, the celestial economy. This little guy who told me to do all these things, I didn't know who he was. His name was Dan Fonte, and he's an internationally acclaimed novelist.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that. And here I am. I'm an aspiring writer. I didn't know he was I started writing it was really funny because I wrote this novel called Jerk Off. It's about a porn addict.
Right.
And Fonte, who is an internationally acclaimed novelist, he goes, "Hey, how's Jerk Off coming along?" And I would tell him, and he goes, "Well, dude," he would give me advice in these little, like, Jerk Off breaks into his ex's apartment to read her journals.
Right.
And Fonte goes, "Well, make sure he steals her dildo." I mean, little things like that, Right. But everything he told me to do, he goes, get Jerk Off a pet, because that makes Jerk Off, more sympathetic. Make him find a pet. Make him find a dog or a cat. And let's see him be nice to that animal. Little things like that I never would have thought of, And I dedicated that book to him.
Nice.
Hold on one second. This is the blurb that Fonte wrote. Jerk Off is angry, pornographic, relentless, and insulting. It is the most original work from a most original voice. Read Jerk Off.
Amazing.
A plug
so
for
cool.
So Doug, man. Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me, Nick. I really had a great time.
Thanks for listening. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/thedrunkalogs.